So I just got done recording a podcast where we broke down 2 key concepts for tendon loading. The first was mechanotransduction and the second was stress shielding. And so I'm gonna link to that video because this video is the practical session for that. So make sure you watch that video before or after so that this one makes a little bit more sense for you. So I thought after recording the pod, it might be good just to get on my notebook and just map this out a little bit for you. This is something I would do if you were a coach or a PT or athletic trainer or someone that was in the room with me. I would go to a whiteboard and try to map some of this stuff out. So let's try to do that now, and I'll avoid moving my hands too much with the overhead camera. So let's start with a few things. We got to give it a good title, right? All good notes start with a good title. And so we're gonna put tendon loading up here because this is what we're talking about, right? Now from there, switch colors on you. The 2 primary things that we talked about today, the first one was mechanotransduction. And again, that is simply how we turn forces, that should be a T, transduction. That is how we turn forces into signals or signaling that allows for a stronger tendon to be created, right? It's how the body understands it's time to lay down some good material. The second one that we talked about was stress shielding, right? And remember, that is probably a protective mechanism to avoid kind of injured or unhealthy tendon. So we have to appreciate that because we need that deformation with stress relaxation to allow that tendon to heal, to get some forces through that injured part. Okay, so we talked about that already today. Now, how would we build out this, right? If an athlete comes to you and says, hey, I'm dealing with some tendon pain, first consult a PT or a doctor, right? All of that is out the way. But what would you do from a training perspective? What are some things that come to mind? I think we would kind of have our treatment levels. So I'm going to put TX levels here, and I think level 1 would become isometrics, which we talked about today, specifically yielding isometrics or overcoming isometrics and something like a leg extension if we're talking knee pain, right? That might be good. Brings to mind that ebony Rio research, brings to mind the research of isometrics having an analgesic effect. I said in the pod, remember, that can be helpful. I would try it, but it's not a panacea. It doesn't work for everybody, although the internet might make you believe that. And then what we would probably want to do is also add, that's an arrow, some slow eccentrics. And this probably would become light loaded or even body weight, right? Because when we get to level 2, now we're going to get into our heavier work. And so here is where we're going to have some heavy, slow resistance, right? So kind of progressing from the slow eccentrics. Now we have heavy, slow resistance, and we're going to add to that, I think, some ballistic work or concentric only or propulsive only ballistics. And so you might call this ballistics. You might call that concentric only, right? Or propulsive based stuff, right? Propulsive drills, right? And this is a space where we're going to slowly introduce our plyometrics. Actually, as we add to that, probably like extensive plyos would come in here as well. This is where we're going to introduce some of that stretch shortening cycle. We're going to introduce some of that faster velocity, but we're just not going to do it at a level that's advanced yet, right? We want to gradually build up to it. And then as we think through level 3, now you have your slow and fast stretch shortening cycle stuff, right? These are our more traditional plyometrics. Maybe we've moved from extensive to intensive plyos, right? And then we're probably just going to add on to that more sport specific type stuff, right? So multi-directional comes to mind, multi-directional. And then finally, I would just through increasing capacity with all of this. So kind of, I think last part might be like all of this combined, just think through slowly building the capacity for each of these, right? So like the idea of workload or building chronic load comes to mind. So I'm gonna put building chronic load with each of these, right? So that becomes kind of our 3 levels as you take an athlete through. A simple progression might be, here I'm gonna change colors just to make this easier on us. If this was a 3-month progression, you can say, 1 month here, 1 month here, and 1 month here, right? And again, that's just general You would want to actually get in to see how the athlete is responding, progress them based on that stuff, right? There's a ton more that would go into that, but I think that this at least gives us a nice starting point for understanding and applying mechanical transduction, stress shielding, and an appropriate gradual progression through our kind of levels of quote unquote treatment for the tendon. So hopefully that was helpful. Again, I thought about this after recording, but mechanical transduction and stress shielding are two key concepts that we have to understand and appreciate. And then we want to build out from there with our programming. Thanks for sticking around, and make sure you hit that subscribe button.